They smiled on your screen every night. They made you laugh, cry, fall in love with television, and hid one of the biggest secrets of their lives to do it. For decades, British TV wasn't ready to know the truth about some of its biggest legends. Coming out could have ended careers overnight, so they stayed silent some for their entire lives. Today we're finally telling their stories, the ones the tabloids missed and history almost buried. Stick around because legend number 3 will completely change how you see one of Britain's most beloved icons. Roy Barraclough. Most people remember Roy Barraclough as one half of a legendary comedy double act with Les Dawson. Dressed up as two gossiping housewives, Sissy and Ada, the pair traded outrageous small talk over a garden fence in a sketch so beloved it still turns up in British comedy retrospectives today. The chemistry between Barraclough and Dawson made the routine an instant classic, and it remains one of the most fondly remembered bits in British television history, still quoted by fans decades later. Beyond that partnership, Barraclough was also a familiar face to millions as a longtime cast member of Coronation Street, the popular British soap opera where he played the shrewd pub landlord Alec Gilroy for over a decade, becoming one of the show's most memorable characters. His knack for dry wit and impeccable comic timing made him a natural fit for both sketch comedy and scripted drama alike, and he moved easily between the two throughout his career. What audiences didn't see, however, was a private life kept almost entirely out of the spotlight. Barraclough rarely spoke about his personal relationships in interviews, and those who worked alongside him have since described a man who drew a firm, deliberate line between his public persona and his private world. He preferred to let his work speak for itself, rather than his personal affairs, and colleagues have said this reserve was simply part of who he was. Roy Barraclough passed away in 2017 at the age of 81, leaving behind a body of work that continues to bring laughter to new generations of viewers. To this day, he is remembered as one of the sharpest, most gifted comic performers of his era, a true craftsman whose partnership with Dawson defined a golden age of British comedy. Ivor Novello. Long before television existed as we know it today, Ivor Novello was already one of the biggest names in British entertainment. A gifted composer, actor, and matinee idol, he was said to be one of the most photographed faces in the country throughout the 1920s and 1930s, drawing crowds and adoring fans wherever he appeared in public. Novello made his name writing enormously popular songs and stage musicals, including the World War I anthem, Keep the Home Fires Burning, which became a patriotic staple in Britain almost overnight and helped launch his career while he was still in his 20s. His talent for melody, combined with his matinee idol looks, made him one of the most celebrated figures of the British stage for decades, and he went on to write and star in a string of successful West End musicals. Behind the glamour, though, Novello lived a quieter truth. He shared his life with his partner actor Bobby Andrews for nearly 35 years, and within theatrical circles this was simply understood and accepted among those close to him, publicly. However, he allowed the fan magazines to spin whatever romantic narrative sold the most copies, since revealing the truth at the time could have unraveled the career and reputation he had spent decades carefully building. Novello passed away in 1951 at the age of 58. But his legacy lives on in a lasting way. The Ivor Novello Awards, one of Britain's most prestigious honors in songwriting, still carry his name today. Presented annually to recognize outstanding achievement in music, the awards stand as a fitting tribute to a man whose talent shaped British entertainment for a generation, even as he kept his personal life carefully guarded from public view. Wilfrid Brambell. If you know one thing about Wilfrid Brambell, it's probably his role as Albert Steptoe, the cantankerous rag and bone man in Steptoe and Son, one of the most successful and enduring sitcoms in BBC history. His portrayal of the crafty, endlessly complaining old man opposite Harry H. Corbett became a defining piece of British television comedy, and the show drew audiences of millions during its run through the 1960s and into the 1970s. What far fewer people knew at the time is that Brambell was gay, living at a period when even a hint of it in the press could destroy a leading man's career. In 1962, he was arrested for an offense related to his sexuality. The case was handled quietly enough that it barely made a dent in his public profile, and he went on to play one of Britain's best-loved television characters for another decade without the wider public ever connecting the dots. Brambell's performance as Albert Steptoe remains a cornerstone of British comedy, admired for its sharp writing and the believable, often touching friction between father and son that anchored the show. Off-screen, though, he kept his personal life carefully guarded, a common necessity for gay men in entertainment during an era when homosexuality remained criminalized in Britain until partial decriminalization in 1967, 5 years after his arrest. He continued acting well after Steptoe and Son ended, taking on various stage and screen roles, including an early appearance in the first Beatles film before his death in 1985 at the age of 72. Today, he's remembered both for his comic brilliance and increasingly as part of a broader conversation about the hidden lives many entertainers of his generation were forced to lead in silence. Russell Harty. Long before reality television existed, Russell Harty was already coaxing Hollywood stars into dropping their guard week after week on his chat show Sofa. With a warm, mischievous interviewing style, he had a gift for putting even the biggest names at ease on camera, drawing out candid, often surprising moments that made his shows must-watch television across Britain throughout the 1970s and 80s. Harty built his reputation across several popular talk shows, becoming known for his sharp wit and genuine curiosity about his guests. He wasn't afraid to ask playful or probing questions, and that mix of charm and cheekiness made him one of the most recognizable broadcasters of his time, equally comfortable interviewing film stars, authors, and politicians. Compared to many of his contemporaries, Harty was relatively open in private about who he was, and those close to him were well aware of his personal life. Still, he never confirmed it publicly to the press, largely as a way to shield himself from the kind of tabloid frenzy that could end a broadcasting career overnight during that era. It was a careful balancing act many public figures of his generation had to manage throughout their working lives. Russell Harty passed away in 1988 at just 53 years old following complications from hepatitis. His illness and death drew renewed and often invasive tabloid attention to his personal life, a stark illustration of exactly the kind of scrutiny he had spent his career trying to avoid. Even so, he's remembered fondly today as one of British television's most engaging and warm-hearted interviewers, a broadcaster who had a rare gift for making conversations with celebrities feel like eavesdropping on genuinely fun exchanges. John Inman. A camp walk, a fussy voice, and one legendary catchphrase, "I'm free," was all it took for John Inman to become a household name, playing Mr. Humphreys, the flamboyant menswear assistant on Are You Being Served? The BBC sitcom became a massive hit, both in Britain and internationally, running for over a decade, and Inman's performance turned him into one of the most recognizable comic actors of his generation. For years, the press speculated endlessly about his private life, often in ways that pushed right up against the line of outing him outright. Inman, however, gave nothing away. He insisted for decades that his personal life was nobody's business but his own, deflecting questions with humor and refusing to let tabloid curiosity dictate the terms of his career or public image. It wasn't until much later in life that Inman entered into a civil partnership publicly with his longtime partner, hairdresser Ron Lynch, in 2005, once the law in Britain had finally changed to allow such unions. Before that, his entire adult life had been lived carefully and deliberately out of public view, a necessity for many entertainers of his era, navigating a media landscape far less accepting than today's. Inman continued acting on stage and screen well after Are You Being Served ended its run, remaining a beloved figure in British entertainment and pantomime. He passed away in 2007 at the age of 71. Today, he's remembered not only for one of sitcom history's most enduring comic characters, but also as someone who quietly held his ground through decades of public scrutiny, choosing to reveal his private life entirely on his own terms. Larry Grayson. At his peak hosting the Generation Game, Larry Grayson drew an astonishing 20 million viewers a week, a number modern television will likely never see again. His entire comic persona was built on a flamboyant, campy delivery, full of exaggerated gestures, knowing asides to the camera, and catchphrases like "shut that door" that audiences adored and quoted for years afterward, both in living rooms and playgrounds across the country. Grayson had spent decades performing in working men's clubs and theaters before television made him a household name almost overnight in the mid-1970s. Once he took over hosting duties on the Generation Game, he became one of the biggest stars in Britain, his warmth and wit turning ordinary contestants into part of the entertainment itself. And yet, for all his fame, Grayson never once discussed his sexuality publicly during his lifetime. Friends have since said he simply came from a generation that never learned how to say it out loud, even decades after homosexuality was decriminalized in Britain in 1967. For Grayson, the silence wasn't really about hiding so much as it was simply how his generation had always operated, a private matter that stayed private, full stop, regardless of changing laws or attitudes. Larry Grayson passed away in 1995 at the age of 71. He remains remembered as one of the most watched entertainers Britain ever produced, and in equal measure one of the most privately guarded, a beloved public figure who never felt the need, or perhaps the freedom to explain himself to anyone beyond his closest circle. Charles Hawtrey. Thin, bespectacled, and always somehow turning up in the wrong place at the worst possible moment, that was Charles Hawtrey's screen persona across dozens of carry-on films. The wildly popular British comedy series that ran from the late 1950s through the mid-1970s. His fussy, easily flustered characters became a signature part of the franchise's ensemble comedy, and he appeared in more carry-on films than almost any other cast member during his years with the series. Within the industry, it was widely known that Hawtrey was gay, though it was never discussed openly in public during his career, in keeping with the times. He never married and lived much of his adult life with his mother, an arrangement that shielded him somewhat from the kind of press scrutiny other public figures faced during that era. Hawtrey's later years told a much harder story. After leaving the Carry On series in the early 1970s, work grew scarce, and his final years were marked by increasing isolation and struggles with alcohol. He spent them largely out of the spotlight he'd once thrived in, settling into a quiet, withdrawn life in Deal, Kent, far removed from his years of fame and regular work. Charles Hawtrey passed away in 1988 at the age of 73, following complications from surgery after a period of declining health. His contribution to British comedy remains enormous, having helped define an entire era of screen humor, even as his private story went mostly untold, until long after his death, when biographers and former colleagues began piecing together a fuller picture of the man behind the familiar, flustered face audiences loved. Frankie Howerd. Across 5 decades on stage, radio, television, and film, Frankie Howerd could still bring a room to its knees with nothing more than a raised eyebrow, a knowing sigh, and a perfectly timed pause. His rambling, conspiratorial style of comedy, often speaking directly to the audience as if letting them in on a private joke, made him one of Britain's most distinctive comic voices, from his early radio days through hit films like the Carry On series and his own popular sitcom Up Pompeii. For nearly 40 years, Howerd shared his life with a partner, Dennis Heimer, who also worked as his manager, handling much of the business side of his career behind the scenes. It was a relationship almost nobody outside their close circle knew about at the time. Publicly, Howard simply let people assume whatever they wanted about his personal life and never bothered to correct them. A quiet strategy that let him keep working without ever having to address the truth directly with the press. It's a strange kind of quiet bravery, spending an entire career making the nation laugh while carrying something you weren't able to say out loud. Howard continued performing right up until his death in 1992 at the age of 75. His comic timing still remarkably sharp after all those years on stage. Today, he's remembered as one of Britain's great comic originals, and his decades-long relationship with Heimer has since become far better known and publicly acknowledged, offering a fuller, more honest picture of the life and love behind the laughter he gave audiences for so long. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos. See you in the next one.